This is Fowl Players Radio, your podcast for arts, entertainment, and pop culture. Welcome. My name is Michael Spedden, your host. Every episode features fun, fascinating stories about people in the performing arts, actors, authors, dancers, writers, musicians, athletes, you name it. Folks who are center stage, backstage, on camera, or behind the scenes. Sit back and listen. Let's have some fun. Fowl Players Radio is a proud production of the Fowl Players Group and the official podcast of the Fowl Players of Perryville.
Hi, this is Bud Becker.
Hi, everybody. Dwight Weems from Gaz the Fun Band.
Hi, folks. This is Jay David.
Hey, this is Brian Damage from Kicks and Rhino Bucket.
Hi, this is Kim of Kim's Crypt.
Hello, my name is Gunhild Carling.
Hi, this is Paul Castiglia, and you're listening to Fowl Players Radio, the one-stop shop for all your pop culture needs.
Hello, listeners. We at Fowl Players Radio thank you for all of your support over the past 10 seasons and nearly 300 episodes. We would like to encourage you to keep listening and spread the word. Audio versions of all episodes can be found on our main website, fowlplayersradio.com, as well as on many of the other platforms you can see here. You can find all of our Season 9 and 10 episodes, as well as some best-of episodes and shorts on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@fowlplayersradio. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get alerts when new episodes are released. No matter what platform you choose to listen, you can help us greatly by hitting the subscribe button and giving us an honest review. You can also help us by supporting us at patreon.com/foulplayersradio or at buymeacoffee.com/foulplayerw. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to be your one-stop shop for all of your pop culture needs. Be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for new episode announcements and news and updates on all of our guests. Thank you, and enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Best of Fowl Players Radio. Tonight we go back to July 19th, 2021 to Season 7, Episode 60, to our interview with drummer Jim Darr. I've known Jim for well over 30 years. We both came up together in the Baltimore-DC Club Scene of the 80s and 90s. We had a great time reminiscing about clubs like Feathers Lounge, The Rage, Maxwell's, The Network, the Paragon, Hammerjacks, and other Baltimore things such as the Monsters of Edgerock Festival, 97 Underground, ROX Magazine, and others. In the 2000s, Jim was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer and lost his left leg at the hip. But soon after that, he learned to play drums again and is still playing today. Jim has a YouTube page, and you can see the link to it in the show notes for his drum cover series. Remember, all of our episodes from day one can be heard at fowlplayersradio.com, and all episodes from Seasons 9, 10, and best of episodes can be seen on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@fowlplayersradio. No matter where you listen, please remember to hit the like and subscribe button and give us a fair review. We'll be right back with Jim Darr. The Fowl Players of Perryville will be returning to the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad on July 1st, August 5th, September 2nd, October 7th, and 28th. For more information, please see www.wmsr.com and www.fowlplayersofperryville.com. Hope to see you there.
Hey, you guys, this is Gina Shock, drummer of the Go-Go's.
Snowman here.
Hey, Mary Jo Peel here.
Hi, this is Kathy Ladman.
Hi, this is Jay Nedry from the Road Ducks.
This is A.D. Adams, and you are tuned in to Fowl Players Radio with your host, Michael Spedden.
Folks, tonight, I'm glad to have an old friend of mine on tonight. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I've run into this guy. Gosh, we've known each other, I'd say, well over 30 years now. We're going back to the mid to late 80s, probably 30 to 35 years. Jimmy Darr. How the hell are you, bud? It's great to have you tonight.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me on your show. I listen to it all the time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So you're the one.
If I'm the only one, I'd be quite surprised, bud.
Hey,
we all talk about it,
Oh, good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Jimmy, gosh, just all the memories, and if you've been listening to the show, I've had a good number of folks on, from that time, people that I got to know back in those days and have kind of reunited with on Facebook. And, as have you, we're all still around in some capacity, some playing and some not. But I think the one thing we all agree on is what a great time that was to be playing around here,
Oh, yeah. Fantastic time to be out there. it was everything it was and more. You didn't have to be a really big time musician to be living the life and having that kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, some of the other things, I mean, we really got to know each other back in those days because, and as you've probably heard me say this on other shows too, there was no Facebook to do your advertising. If you wanted people at your show, your butt had better be out at that club, shaking hands with people, giving out flyers and cassettes or stickers or whatever you have, and doing some face to face with people,
I mean, that's what it was all about. And, aside from having to put out the flyers and, you always went to the music store to pick up that very last copy of Merlin Musician that had the one ads in it.
Oh, yeah.
And you would have the 8x10 cards up on the cork board, people looking for musicians.
Mm-hmm.
That was the way we did it. But, you always had to have that one guy that either worked at IBM or had access to a printer to make the flyers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Believe me. Or access to your work building late at night when nobody else was in there, and
That's right.
and you had a copier you didn't need a code for. Oh man. Yeah, that would, or scrounging nickels out of the back seat of in between your seat cushions in your car to run into the library and run copies or something.
Looking back, it's I think about this a lot. I was just thinking about it the other day, and I was hoping we might be able to bring it up. The scene that we had back then, it was really weird because when you looked at the scene over on the West Coast, all the bands over there did not compete with each other. They helped each other.
Yeah.
They produced the scene and the shows. Now over here, at least in my experience, just about every single band I was in and every band I saw and witnessed out there, it was so competitive. It was cutthroat. People would step over top of each other to try to get a gig instead of working together. Did you get that same impression?
To a certain extent, yes. It depended on the band, really. In my experience, there were a number of bands that were a little cutthroat. There were some that were, pricks, especially when it came to issues like, if you were the opening band, and they would have like everything on the stage and they gave you like maybe 3 feet of space for like 5 people to stand in.
Yes.
There were things like that. There were things where maybe a sound man was kind of a jerk.
Yes.
But the thing was that there were a lot of times, like whenever we would get a gig, like when we did CBGBs, the show before we played there were a lot of bands that came out to congratulate us and, actually caravanned up to New York or they chipped in for the rider truck and rode in the back and luckily didn't die of carbon monoxide poisoning on the way up there. I mean, going through the tunnel with all that exhaust and all that traffic. But, I see it was both ways there. But the thing was that there were a lot of bands that had like groups of like alliances, I think, with people. Then there were like, and then there were like, not, I wouldn't say, I would say a cliques kind of sounds like a bunch of girls in some movie about Beverly Hills High. I don't want to say clique, but I would say kind of like, maybe colonies, maybe would that be, you know what I mean?
I mean, if something changes, everything changes. Today, you get 5 or 6 bands on the same bill. They help each other move the equipment on and off stage so the next band can get up there. Everybody cooperates so well. Where, as in back in the day, you weren't helping anybody move anything. You might have had a road crew doing that, but it was just so, I don't want to go so far as to say, well, my band is better than your band, but it was kind of like the impression that you got, whether it was or not.
You had to go in there with, I think part of the competition level was going in there with a swagger, going in there with a swagger and kind of doing some things to bring some attention to yourself, and a lot of that was done in the form of hair,
Yes.
and, piercings,
money,
mm-hmm.
a lot of money.
Yeah. And I remember just doing different things to kind of, and some of the stuff that we did was dumb. I can remember We started off of a show in Feathers one time. I think it may have been when we played with you guys when you were in Temper. I think when we opened up the show, and I can't remember if we were with you guys or with Scarlet Angel.
Well, if it was Temper, it was I didn't. Matter of fact, when I first found out about Temper, the very first time I saw them, with Glenn and Will, they had a singer named Vinnie Rock. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember
him?
Vinny. Yeah, he had a van with like on his spare tire on the back of the van. It said Vinny Rock.
And I saw them playing, and it wasn't long after that something happened with Vinny. Either he was ousted or he left the band, and I came into the picture. I guess we'll talk about it later. But yes, I wouldn't have been there playing with you at Feathers Lounge. I never played the Temper at Feathers.
Okay.
But I remember you playing there a lot though, because I used to see it in Merlin Musician and the ads.
Yeah. Fritz's Dynamite did. We played there. But what the thing was like we started off the first song and we had, our guitar player come running up to the stage from the back of the room. Right. And they're like, hey, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Cause he had like a wireless and he could do that.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of I was like, that's dumb. And then I got
to have a wireless back then was a big deal too.
It was a big deal back then. And it was very risky because if you saw Spinal Tap, there was a big part of truth in that movie with things getting picked up. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I remember those days. Feathers Lounge, what a place that was! Down the steps in the basement, and then you had that hole of a dressing room that you said the guy would launch out of with the guitar. What a place!
It was, and the steps. Now the steps there weren't as bad as the Paragon, but they were still kind of tricky, because I did some roadieing back in those days too. Johnny that I play with in Uncle Moldy.
Yes.
I kind of learned, how to play and how to do the band thing by, apprenticing almost with him. And especially his brother, Bob, really kind of mentored me as a bass player and everything. And I would help them on the weekends. They would sneak me in to watch. I was like 16 and I would be lugging their PA out of there. And these were big community cabinet, PAs. Up and down those steps. And I tell you, it was good training for sports as well as really earning a little bit of money. But I tell you, but I think the Paragon was worse for some reason. I just remember the Paragon, those steps just never ended. I mean,
it was like kind of like the Bayou was that way. You had to go up the fire escape in the back to get up to the top.
Oh, yeah.
You were talking about having those mentors as you were coming up. It's like today, you can go to YouTube, you can get mentorship in so many different ways. But as you said, back then in those days, there would always be like some guys, like in a band that have been playing longer than you, or guys that have really done some really big things.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you're in the right place at the right time, people will take you under their wing and teach you everything you know. And that's how we had to do it back then.
It was. And, everything from how to take care of an instrument, how to, tune correctly, how to, set up your amp and all that stuff. They would, Bob, really took me under his wing and showed me a lot of stuff. And Johnny did too. And I was lucky to have those guys. I really missed the days when I was, to be 16 again and getting into those clubs with them and everything. And I pretty much had to stay behind the soundboard and not move because I do, just by nature of my own size, tend to draw a lot of attention to myself. And I didn't want to be getting thrown out of there or anything. But yeah, back in those days with Winter Sun was their band and they played Feathers and got JD Saloon, got so many places now.
Wow. The Zoo, JD Saloon, Gus's, the Zoo.
Yeah, the Zoo. Boy, and oh man, there's just, so many of them you can name that you look around and it's just like, there's Facebook memes about that, dads driving around town and saying, I played there. And well, the thing is, the biggest one, I think the most drastic one is probably the fact that the network is there's just like nothing to be found of that place. And there's nothing but a CVS there on that ground,
Interesting enough, mentioning the network, I got a chance to open up the network Sandbar reunion with some members of Temper. I think it was, I'm going to say back around 2010.
Yeah.
When they did that at the Record Theater. And very interesting because, you know, when you try to do a reunion with a band that hasn't played in 20 some years, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of the guys are in the interesting story here with that actual reunion because Mannequin, if you remember them, was the headliner.
Yeah.
And here I am trying to get Temper together to go ahead and do the opening. Jeff Chance was the promoter that put that on. You probably know Jeff.
Yeah, I've got him coming on soon too.
Oh, he's great. You know, he's done a lot of stuff around town, but he put the entire show together himself. He did a fantastic job because it sold out. But as I was trying to get Temper together, there were a few members from the original group that were into other things. Some of them we literally couldn't find. So I wound up being able to get Willie Purdue, who plays bass in the band Surreal, and he was an original member. So I got him and tried to get Glenn. He was unavailable, and that was kind of like a big hit because, you know, Temper was Glenn's band.
Yeah.
He was a big part of that because we were on guitar band. So Steve Miller, who was playing with Alive, and Glenn was actually in that band with him, recommended Charlie Higgs to me from Staggerwing.
Okay.
And Charlie took the show, and I thought I had a singer. We're at the actual gig, and I didn't have a singer up until a half hour before the show went on.
Oh, wow.
And this had been kind of like promoted for a really long time. We had a few singers back out. So luckily, Willie brought Walt from Surreal.
Oh, yeah. He's a good singer.
And he's fantastic. And the funny thing was, you know, we had to play probably about 8 songs. We never had one single rehearsal. I went to Charlie Higgs. All he asked for, he owned a music store up in Parkville called Just About Music, I believe it was. So went up there and took him the songs that we were going to play, you know, a bunch of Stick songs, some old 80s tunes, AC/DC. And he said, okay. And he showed up. Everybody just showed up. I mean, the guys were so professional. They're all in bands that were playing out, and everything came together well. The day before the show, I got a call from one of the guys from Mannequin. Their drummer's not going to be able to make the show, and they wanted to know if I could fill in and play with them. They were playing some pretty complex material, and I wasn't quite prepared. So they wound up getting the drummer from Surreal. So it was just great that all of us local guys that have known each other for so long were able to go do something like that at the spur of the moment, call each other and say, hey, I need you, hey, this, and everybody showed, and the show was sold out and went on. It was great, and everybody was so professional. It's really proud achievement that I was able to get involved in for that reunion.
Yeah, those were great because I saw a lot of those on Facebook, and I saw a lot of people talking about them, and people were posting videos from them. And, you know, I was, you know, around that time when those things were popular, because they did a number of them, I think, at Wrecker Theater. And I was trying to talk the guys in Orange Seed to coming out and doing it. And it's just like, you know, I just couldn't make it happen, you know. It's always been, you know, I've always been the steadfast vote for wanting to do it. All the other guys have been back and forth on it and can never come up with a decision. So, you know, and I was like, you know, I can't just do it myself, you know, just go up there and play bass with nothing else. So, hey, you know, but
well, you know, it's got to the point where you get the guy that wants to go up and play. You get the guy that wants to do it, but you try to check with the original guy and make sure you have their blessing so that there's no problems later on. Why did you replace me in my own band? Well, I didn't. You know, a couple of us wanted to do it. You were the only one that didn't, but we did ask you for permission. We weren't going to do it if you said no.
Right,
You know?
exactly.
You know, that's the right thing to do.
Well, yeah, well, yeah, exactly, exactly. You know, you at least want to be couth about it, you know, at least, you know, do the right thing when it comes to that sort of thing. So, yeah, but you know, I mean, what the heck, you know, I've got a lot of other irons in the fire and things for me to do. I'm in no shortage of performances, believe me. I've got enough going on here to where, you know, I'm not ever going to get bored or run out of things to do. You know that, you know. So, you know, you were doing these reunions, and yeah, that had to have been a lot of fun just going to do those and, you know, being able to go and stuff. I mean, and just to be there and just see all these guys get together and, you know, the just the memories of everybody. Must have been just wonderful to, you know, witness all that, huh?
And not only that, you know, the band part of it and the musicians, but the fans, the people that came are all the same people that used to come out to those old shows many years ago.
Right,
Seeing that,
right.
talking to them, you know, and you know, some of the things that you hear about what they've done in their lives in the meantime. And then you hear them come up to you and say things like, you know, I still have your M16 tape from like 1986, you know, and you're in, and they're talking about, I still play your you know, your temper demo, and you know, that was 1991. So to go back and hear all that again, being a little older, a little wiser, it really it's a great feeling.
It is. I can imagine, you know. How about, you know, so I think, you know, we had kind of run into each other a number of years before even Temper going to the mid 80s, because I know you had been in a number of bands that rehearsed right down the street from where Fritz and I were, you know,
Right.
in down in Bowley's quarters. I know you had played with Cyril Charles, you know, Chad as we know him, and Mike Diamond, and the Monsters of Edgerock show. What a classic that was. You remember that one?
Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We did the second one. There was one that I believe, geez, False Prophet. That was the band with Terry Iyer,
Okay.
who was the lead singer. I can't remember any of the other guys' names, but you know, the one thing about Baltimore is if you're not playing with this guy this week, you're going to be playing with him next week. And then you're
That's
also
the
going to
truth.
be playing with him again 5 years later. Then you're going to get into a fight, break up, and then you'll be playing again in 3 years from that. You know, so it's like all the same guys in the same circle, just changing band names over years. But the Monsters of Edgerock came about because there was a guy that owned a construction company down off Lodge Forest Road in Edgemere.
Yeah.
And the guy was known for being the town partier. I mean, that's all he did.
Yeah.
He had nothing to do with music. He didn't know anything about promoting or anything. He just liked to party and have like 50 to 100 people at his house every weekend. And I forget who gave him the idea. It probably was Terry Iyer, because they were neighbors, but said, hey, you know, I got a band that's actually playing out. Why don't we do a big thing in your construction yard, which was pretty sizable. And actually pulled some flat beds up and hooked them together and made a 4-foot stage. We got Stars Productions to come down, little Dave Ringsdorf and Bill White, the late guy that used to run for Van Halen. Those guys came down and set their equipment up, and the first Monsters of Edgerock, I want to say, was like maybe 85 or 86.
I think so. I know I went to one where I met Kim from Scarlet Angel. I met Scarlet Angel, and I think I remember Diamond Gypsy playing at it, and I think that may have been like 87 or 88, I'm thinking.
That's right. They opened the show, Scarlet Angel.
Yeah.
And we played, and at that time it was me, Mike, I think Chad, and a female guitar player that was actually a student of Glenn Campbell, who would later play with Temper. She was our lead guitarist at that gig.
Right. Her name was Mary something or other. I didn't really know her personally, but I'd seen her a couple of times, you know, playing and stuff. And, you know, yeah. And I remember that being, hearing about that on 97 Underground, you know, I mean, just imagine back in those days, having the radio station telling people to come to your house, you know, holy cow. But it was fun. It was a good turnout, you know, I mean, there was plenty of, it was plenty of good times at that place, you know?
Yeah, 98 Rock actually picked it up the second year, which was the year that I believe you went when we played, because we didn't play the first year, we played the second year, and then they kept doing it. They did it, and now they're doing it down at Fort Howard, and they have a different name for it. It's still Edge something, but now they do it down at Fort Howard. So that's continued all the way since those times.
That's cool. That's really cool, you know. That's been going on ever since then. God, some of these places we were talking about before too, you know, we had talked about Feathers. You know, did you ever do the old mill down near Turner Station?
No, but I know exactly where that was. I do believe I might have attended a few shows there, but never played there myself.
Yep. I got booked there quite a few times, and the thing that was really neat about it was it used to be a country bar, and they had like this like mural on the wall behind where the stage was. And to kind of cover up the mural, they had these long streamers back there, like these tinsel streamers hanging down. And there was also like this, it looked like a submarine periscope sticking up on the right side of the stage that had all the light switches on it. I just remembered that. And having to stand there, and I like impaled my hip like 3 times bumping into that thing because I was always on that side of the stage, you know.
Right up the street from there, there was the Ponca Bird Inn. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, the Ponca Bird. I sure do.
When I was in my, I had a little period of time where I had to, we were talking about the earlier bands that, heavy metal and rock bands that we did, the garage bands that were just starting to play out. I decided, just out of the clear blue sky one day, I decided, I want to try to make some money at this. I hooked up with Starley, and what was the other, Productions Unlimited, Jim Priscilla, those guys. They had a top 40 band that I joined that was book steady, playing all around. And the Ponca Bird was one of the places I remember that was close to the old mill. That was the one where the stage was in a corner and it was glass walls where you were literally look right out and see, Ponca Street right out the window while you were playing.
Oh yeah.
Really nice place. They had probably the best hamburger you ever ate.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Oh yeah, that's a Mike-sized burger there, man. I tell you, that was. Well, what we used to enjoy about that place too is like we would go in there sometimes, and there would be no band playing or anything, but there was that turn where where Halliburton would turn into Ponca Bird, and we used to sit there when it snowed, and we used to watch people go fishtailing and spinning out around that corner all the time. We would just sit up in the bar and watch.
And you remember, if you weren't playing, you were probably right up the street at Partners or the Harbor Inn.
Yep. Partners. That was the place I forgot. Partners. There was the Harbor Inn and Partners. You're right.
That was top 40. It was kind of like rock guys used to go in there, for one reason and one reason only. That's where all the classy women.
Yeah, I know.
So we would go in there, and it was cool, listening to the dance music with all the lights and everything, because you need a departure from what you're doing sometimes, and it was totally different. That's what I love. The scene was so diverse. You could be in a top 40 atmosphere. You could cross over and do your heavy metal thing, with the saw blades and the lasers and the lights and everything up on stage, and have a ball. It was all about having fun. And today, it's not so much about the money.
Right.
But back then you could make some money even as an original band. And, a lot of guys say, we don't play music for the money, and neither do I, but it's nice to get when you can.
Oh, it is. It's definitely nice to get it when you can. That was the one thing where I remember from, Orange Seed when we were doing that. I had a pleasant surprise. We got booked as a last minute replacement to open for somebody I didn't know down in DC at the 930 Club. And we got down there for the show, and I was like, man, welcome to the pros. We got in there, and they paid us for our opening spot. We did, like a half hour, 40-minute set, open up. We got $150. We had a clean dressing room that didn't smell or have mildew everywhere or have, trash or writing all over the wall or anything. We got a tub of beer and a tub of juices and a deli tray. And I was like, what?
Wow. The full treat?
Yeah. And I was like, wow, I like this place, man. We got to come back here. And, the club owners didn't cry poverty at the end of the night or anything. We had a good show there. I wish we could have done that place more. I mean, I had a ball playing there. It was just, and they gave us in that tub of beer. The thing I liked about it the most, you remember those Foster's oil cans, they used to call them?
Yeah, the oil cans.
Yeah, we used to call them oil cans. And Fritz and I used to drink those all the time.
Wow.
We got turned on to those when we did a 97 or a ROX. It was a ROX unplugged show at Max's on Broadway back when they ran music before they stopped, before they got into like cigars or whatever. And we were like, man, this is good stuff. So whenever we had the opportunity to get Foster's oil cans, we always did, you know. Kind of an old tradition between Fritz and I, you know.
Clubs that do that are awesome. Like there's so many different ones that bands the way they should be treated. Hammerjacks was one. The first time I ever played there was with a group called the Rude Boys, which was Timmy McCrory and Mitch Foote from Mama's Boys and Jimmy Schaefer, who was, I believe, if not the original guitar player for Child's Play, like right there.
I think I grew up in Dundalk, and I think I remember him. I don't know him, but I do remember him. I think he did. I think he was, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I remember seeing them at the Fisherman's Inn where I grew up, way back before I was out playing out. I mean, he might have been 17 years old then. But I remember it all started because I was playing with Mike Diamond, a group with Mike Diamond. I can't remember which one, but we were playing at this place called the Midway Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
And this guy that was running the lights came up to me and he just literally bowled me over. He was just like, hey, man, he goes, I need a drummer for my band and you're going to be playing with my band. And you know how it is. You're already in a band. So you're like, well, what? Who are you? What do you know? And I went back to this guy's place after the end of the night at the club because he wanted to show me some of his, his scrapbook and some of his background and everything. So the guy starts showing me pictures of him opening up for Twisted Sister, Aerosmith, all these bands with the Mama's Boys, who one of their guitar players in that group went on to play with Wrathchild, Jay.
Okay.
So he's like, and I'm very impressed by this guy's portfolio, So I remember, asking the guys in my band if it'd be okay if I went ahead and gave it a shot with these guys because they were putting it together. And they asked me to join and I went ahead and joined, and they called me 3 weeks into rehearsals and said, we got our first gig. And I'm thinking, where? Great. Where? The Midway? And they're like, no, Hammerjacks.
Yeah.
So it's like a big goal to play there, when you're local for a guy in that type of band. And I was just, okay. So when I went to the club and played the gig, it was, I think it was a Sunday. It was called Teen Night at the time. And at the end of the show went good. We went upstairs into the dressing room, and just like you said, everything laid out, the beer, it was clean. It was just, they treated every local band there like they treated national acts that came in there. It was the same exact kind of treatment. And the funny side story to this is that while we were in the dressing room, there were two guys already in there that I didn't recognize and didn't know who they were, but I assumed they were in a band because they had real long hair and just looked like your proverbial band guy from like 1988. They were saying, hey, you guys were great. They were basically a cover group. So they're like, your AC/DC was right on. We need to get together and do some shows. We're playing down here next Saturday night. You should come check us out, blah, blah, blah. So, we just go on with our entourage and everything. We let the guys stay and drink with us. Went back there that Saturday night with my girlfriend on an off night. And when I came in, I saw the curtain across the stage. And I figured, these guys might be a little more than I thought they might. I thought they were like local guys from around Baltimore. It turned out to be Skid Row.
Oh, yeah.
That was the singer, Sebastian Bach and Rachel Bolin.
Oh, yeah.
Were there, just happened to come into the club the night we were playing just to check the club out because they knew they were playing the following weekend. We had no clue. They had no clue where they were going to be in the next year or two. They'd be in Russia playing 2 years later. So you never know.
Right. Well, that's a great story there. And that's the way, it was, I think when you treat people like professionals, things end up being a lot better. Your club lasts a lot longer too. You had just mentioned the Midway Cafe, and that place was there forever as well. And I tell you what, that was not an Orange Sheet Parade room. Woo, boy, that was not an Orange Sheet Parade room. No. We played there one night with a band called They were either called Street Lethal or Street Legal. And
I think Street Legal.
Yeah, Street Legal. And they were very nice guys. But we ended up getting like a headlining gig, and it was supposed to be us and two other bands, and the middle band backed out, and all we had was like maybe 12 or 15 originals, and I think it was like, well, we had a total of 10 originals, 2 that never got recorded, and then we had a couple of cover songs we did, and those guys ended up covering the middle set. So we ended up just playing the last set. But I tell you what, man, with the crowd that was in there that night, we should have had that Blues Brothers chicken wire up, man, because that was the first and only time we played there.
Wow.
But that was a nice, yeah, that was a nice room. I mean, I played there in Fritz's Dynamite, but not with Orange Sheet. We did it once, and yeah, I mean, that was a nice room there. They had a good stage and they had a good room. And I enjoyed going there and everything, but they just hated us. I mean,
now you guys, I remember the first time I saw Orange Seed Parade. I really enjoyed myself because it was, everybody was out playing then, right? And it was an off night for me. And I just loved to hang at the Rage on North Calvert Street.
Oh, yeah, the Rage.
I really, it was because we were playing a lot of big clubs with Temper through James Turner, really big rooms. And to go, I used to like to hang out in those real small, intimate places like the Rage.
Yeah.
That would have all sorts of different music. I'm playing cover tunes for money every single weekend, sometimes 4 or 5 nights a week. And it's great, but you want to go hear that original music and something a little different. The Rage was a great place to go to. And I remember I went in there one night, not even knowing Orange Seed Parade was playing. And I was just totally blown away. I mean, I was very entertained, and like I stayed for the whole entire set. I think you played more than one. Like 2 sets, then.
We may have done 2 sets because we did start off with a lot of cover songs. And then what we would kind of do was just kind of shave the set down. Like we'd replace covers with originals and then go out and just do. But we did keep a couple of covers in the set regardless. We kept a couple of Bauhaus songs, then we kept a couple of David Bowie songs. Bauhaus was Nat's band. He loved Bauhaus. I hated him, but I just did them just to kind of get along in the band. But I
mean, when he came out on that cross, man, I mean, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah. I think Fritz still has that cross somewhere too. Yeah, that and that
away, man. I was like, what?
yeah, we did that, and that got us some negative attention, which I think I've told that story on a couple of other episodes. But yeah, woo boy, did that get us some attention? Good and bad. But
and it was so different at that time because there were so many cover bands and there were so many bands doing the MTV thing. You know what I mean? And then you guys are coming out. You guys were out before, like Nirvana and bands like that actually started doing whatever they wanted to do. You guys were already doing that.
Right. Well, the thing was that we didn't want to be another hair band because we had just stopped Fritz's Dynamite and we wanted to do something that kind of had a hard edge to it. I mean, because we were kind of like the Cure, the Cult, that kind of stuff. The Bauhaus, the Bowie, and because the thing was that 89 going into 90, that was when the hair band thing was really starting to kind of lose its luster, and the good hair bands had already been signed and kind of fading away, and then they just had like a whole bunch of bad hair bands that were kind of.
It got so ridiculous. It got so ridiculous, didn't it?
Yeah, with some of those bands out there that that kind of like came out, I guess through the early 90s. So, but the thing was that people hadn't really heard of what was going on in Seattle yet. And it was kind of like just an open, like a mixed, not what do I want to say? Just kind of like an open thing. Like, what will the next thing be? So we took a guess. Yeah. So we guessed and we kind of did our thing, and that was good. We were around for 3 years. I wish it would have been longer. I mean, the night we broke up was the night we released our CD. I mean,
how did that happen?
Wow. Don't ask, man. That was, that's.
You want to ask? I know.
It was not something I was in favor of, but I'm not gonna, But
yeah, but it can happen like in a snap decision, you know what I mean? And you look back on it 15 years later and say, wow, man, maybe we should have talked for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, maybe there should have been a discussion and everything. So yeah. But what can you do? So Jim, in some really great bands. I used to see you quite a bit, played with you quite a bit. You had some adversity come up in your life. I guess you told me it was about 15 years ago. Tell us about
Yeah.
what happened. It was a health issue that you had.
Yeah, that was a big one, man. At the time, I wasn't doing anything musically. I was kind of like, how you have those idle times in between years where you're just trying to find out what you want to do next.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And yeah, everybody goes through that, I guess. And I was kind of in that period. It was around 2006 into 2007. And I noticed in my left hip groin area, I had a little bit of irritation. And I'll say it was just irritation because that's all it was. It wasn't any kind of great pain or anything like that. And at the time I was riding around, I had one of those mopeds, one of them 50cc little mopeds. And I used to drive around on that, and I kept noticing more and more every time I got off of it that this irritation would get worse and worse and worse till it actually did start to hurt. It was pain involved. So I just treated it with aspirin, Motrin, doing the wrong thing. Never went and got it checked out. So finally it got so bad where I couldn't lay my leg out flat when I tried to sleep. I went to the hospital and they took a look at it, and lo and behold, a couple hours later, I find out it's a tumor, it's cancer. When you get that, when you hear that, you process it and you understand what they're saying. But at the same time, there's a whole different part of your brain that refuses to accept the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking, okay, well, what do we do? I wasn't prepared for anything other than getting rid of it and moving on. That's all I wanted to do. And the doctor told me, he said, it's so rare, the kind that you have, only about 2,000 people a year get it in the United States. He goes, I've been a professor of oncology for over 36 years, and I've only seen 2 of these. That didn't give me a whole lot of, happiness to hear that, because I figured, well, if they never see it, how are they treating it? He did say, on the other hand, it's very treatable. If we, I wish you'd have came earlier, because the key to catching any kind of cancer is to catch it early. I recommend that anybody, if you have any symptoms at all, the quicker you get those symptoms looked at, the better. Don't do like I did and wait for a year, then go in, because I was in stage 3 already and didn't even know it.
Wow.
Luckily, I had it in an extremity, whereas, it's a lot less noticeable. You don't think about getting cancer down in your hip or your leg or anything like that. And the doctor told me, he said, well, we have 2 options. He goes, we can do an operation. We can take out the tumor. And usually it's successful if I can get it all. He goes, if it does happen to come back, because it's a very aggressive kind of cancer, sarcoma was the actual name. He goes, we might have to consider, I don't want to say this for sure, but we might have to consider possibly an amputation to make sure we get rid of all this. And I kind of like threw that right in the back of my head, just thinking, well, they're going to get it on the first operation, so let's not worry about that. He did the first operation. It was successful. He removed the tumor. Long story short, 2 weeks later, it came back the same exact size that it was before he took it out. That's how fast it grew back.
2 weeks?
When I went back, 2 weeks, it had come back. And when I went back into the hospital, the only way I found out was because it started bleeding internally.
Oh.
And it was a lot of pain involved. So when I went back to the hospital, he looked at it and they did some tests, and then he came back the next day and he goes, well, remember we talked about the possible amputation? Well, we're there. And I thought to myself, it's kind of hard to process, but I was just like, okay. I said, now what's my alternative if I decide not to do that? And he goes, well, you probably won't be around more than 6 months to a year. And I went, really? It's you don't process somebody giving you that number. And I thought to myself, okay, doc, can I have some time to think about this? He's standing there in the room and he said, yeah, sure. Take all the time you want. Just call me when you're ready to let me know your decision, because I want to do this right away, like tomorrow. And I said, okay. And he got to the door and I said, hold on. Don't go through that door yet. Come back. I've already made my decision. I want to live. Do whatever you have to do, and I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I already had that in my mind that I was going to follow through with the treatment plan. And if you want to live bad enough, you'll convince yourself that you will. And he went ahead and did the operation. They took the leg off at the hip. And, there was a period of time, maybe for about 30 days afterwards, that all you think about is the things you're never going to be able to do again. You know, I'm never going to be able to water ski again. I'm never going to be able to run again. I'm never going to be able to play baseball again. And oh my God, I'm never going to be able to play drums again. And that was the one that really hit me. You know, I'm just like, you know, oh, well, Rick Allen's out there. He's playing with no arm, but, you know, I'm missing a leg, so I certainly can't do it. I would much rather be missing a leg than an arm to be a drummer, you know, but you just don't think of that right in the very beginning. And what changed that was a few months later, after I had rehabbed, learned how to walk again with my forearm crutches and everything. I did very well with that. The doctor came in and I told him, I said, you know, Doc, this is fine and dandy. I'm going to be fine and I'm going to live now. But, you know, hey, man, I'm never going to be able to play drums again. I'm never going to be able to do this again. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, Jimmy, not only are you going to do all those things again, you might even do some of those things better. You will find a way. Mark my words. I just know you will. And that's the one thing that I focused on throughout the years. And you know what? He was absolutely spot on, 100% correct. You will find a way, you know, when you're put in a position that you can't get out of, because you have one of two options. You either do that, or, you know, you can just sit in a wheelchair and collect disability and do nothing. You know, you have that option and you have that choice. You know, I just decided, man, there's just no way that I could sit in a wheelchair or give up and not do anything. There's a lot of guys doing that. You know, Scott Lyon from Juicy Lucy out there, you know, lost both of his legs too, you know, and he's got 2 prosthetics. He's played gigs and he's back up and running. So, you know, you make that choice, you follow through and you do it, and you will find a way. As far as me playing the drums again, it was way simpler than I ever possibly could have imagined. You know, once I got into a positive, motivated state of mind, I just went ahead and had a couple guys come down and look at my set that were, you know, roadies for previous bands. And they went, hey man, just set up 3 hi-hats. Can you learn how to choke them with your left hand instead of having to use your feet? And I went, 10 minutes later, I was doing it. You know, and you just learn a different way of doing the same thing.
Right.
So, you know, that's pretty much the whole story there.
Yeah. It was your left leg that you lost?
Yeah, luckily it was the left leg, because I'm a right-handed drummer, which means my hi-hat would be for my left leg. It would be far more difficult to be managing the bass drum with a missing leg than the other way.
Or if you you know, if you were, because that was normally the leg that you played your kick drum with, you know, I mean, if you had to switch legs like that, and have that for your bass drum, I could see that being kind of challenging, because you would have to, I mean, you would have to kind of retrain your brain to do that, you know?
What's challenging is being a drummer without an arm.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, I can imagine that too. Well, he was able to actually replace his arm with his foot, from what I understand, because a lot of the drums that he was using, they had, I guess, electronic pads made for him, and he was keeping beat with, you know, his arm and one of his legs to do that. And I think that's really neat, you know, that he was able to do it. But I mean, kudos to you, Jimmy. You know, I mean, you know, I have to admit, you know, when I hadn't run into you for a while, and you know, I saw what had happened, but then I saw you get up there and play, I was like, hey, you know, he can still do it, man. You know, and that's great. It's very encouraging and inspiring, you know. And I can just imagine just the range of feelings you must have been going through at the time too. You know, now, did you say they took off the entire leg at the hip? Were there issues with the pelvis too?
Well, it's called, what I had done, it's way above knee. It's called a hip disarticulation, where in other words, it's part of the left pelvis. I mean, all the way up to the pelvis. They take part of the pelvis off and everything below. There's no thigh or anything.
Okay, right.
And then it's amazing how they do it, you know, and you know, it's amazing. And the whole thing about when we were talking about the music has been such a big part of my therapy, because music is therapy no matter what's wrong with you.
Oh yeah. Oh, it is. It is.
And you know, it's just such great therapy. Like, I do my drum cover series now, which, you know, I have the YouTube channel for, where I got something like 64 or 65 cover tunes that I've done, drumless tracks, where I try to make them sound.
I was listening to those. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it keeps me going, keeps me in shape, and I'm also in the process. It's been a lot of years since the amputation. That happened in 2008, and I'm just now. I've been getting around so well with the forearm crutches. I actually went up last week, and they're gonna go ahead and do the prosthetic leg with me now, to where I might be able to go back using the standard hi-hat setup here very soon.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's wonderful news, Jimmy.
Has caught up with back in 2008, the technology has came such a long, I mean, they literally, remember the $6 million man? They literally have those kind of limbs out now.
Yeah, I've been reading a little bit about that since you told me. And well, great, all the best with that. I really hope that you that works for you and everything, that everything goes well, and that you're able to have a successful operation with that. Your YouTube channel sounds great. Unfortunately I did check, and because of copyright issues and my podcast home,
Sure.
I wouldn't be allowed to play any of those on here, but we can refer people to your page.
Oh, wow, wonderful. Yeah.
Yep. And so what we'll do is, folks, in the show notes, I'll put a link there where you can go find all of Jim's drum covers. And I tell you what, he's got some great stuff on there. I was just listening to it when I was out driving the other day. I had a long drive, like an hour drive, and I was just going from one to another. And I tell you what, he's spot on, and you were playing some cool stuff, man. You had,
well, thank you.
I mean, you and I are right up the same alley, I think, with a lot of this stuff, because you had some Triumph on there, the Guns N' Roses. Oh man, all kinds of great stuff on there, Jimmy. I mean, it was just incredible to hear.
Thanks. Interestingly enough, those, I don't know if you know or not, but the way I do those are all electronic drums. There's no acoustic drum and all of that. They've got the technology with those now, where way back in the day, it was sacrilege to even talk about using electronic drums on stage, for the kind of stuff that we were into. Now it's kind of like, wow, man, I can have these set up in 5 minutes. I can program in the exact drum sound that the original drummer used, and I can just plug it into the PA and adjust the volume. So I've been getting more and more into that, a little bit of the high tech stuff now as far as drumming goes, because it helps me too. With my disability, it's a little easier to manage.
Well, good. And I'll tell you what, man, like I said, you're kicking ass, haven't lost anything. The stuff sounds really good. So, great. Well, Jim, I've had a great time catching up with you again. We kind of, send each other nonsense on Facebook, and our maturity level shows, definitely, so but Jimmy, it's been great to have you, and good to really talk to you again and remember all these great things that we did in the past. And besides your YouTube channel, I know you were working with the Gods for a while, weren't you too?
Oh yeah, I just finished up a project for Larry, who was the singer for the God. Well, he was a God. He is a God,
yeah,
still to this day. And for a lot of people that don't understand the Gods, they were punk before punk was punk. I mean, he was on the ESP label with the Fugs and the Velvet Underground when they first came out. And the Gods had a lot of cutting edge, what is now considered to be punk music, but being affiliated with Mike Diamond and Manta Ray Records, I do a lot of video work for Larry for a lot of his songs, where we try to go back and catch that 60s feel and put it in the video.
Right.
And I've been doing stuff with Larry too. I just got off the phone with him today, and we've got a few projects coming up soon.
Oh, that's great to hear. If you could maybe give me the link to where we can find these things. I know Manta Ray Records has a website, or if there's anywhere else, we'll also put that in the show notes for people to find too.
Well, YouTube, you just go to Larry Kessler, and all the videos that I've produced for him, and some of his newer material is under Larry Kessler as a solo artist. But if you want to look at any of the God stuff, you simply just type in the Gods with a Z.
He is a hell of a guy. Johnny and I opened for him. We did open for the Gods at a little place down in Federal Hill. Oh, it was before pandemic. I think it may have been back in 18.
Yeah.
That's right. And on a previous podcast I was on, I had Larry and Rick Sambuco come on.
Mhm,
And
yeah.
Larry was telling me some freaking awesome stories about New York City in the 60s. And he told me a great story about a punch bowl in South Carolina. Um, and I won't give it away because I'm going to try to get him to come on here and tell it himself. But
Yeah.
he's a hell of a guy. Larry, I just love that guy to death. And Rick's a hell of a guy too, you know. I'm glad those guys found each other and they're working together because I enjoy them. And the Gods set, that music is, you know, they have like some pretty, yeah, they have all kinds of songs. They have some stuff that's really off the wall and some stuff that's really killer, you know, like some really good grooving material. And I really enjoy those guys, you know. So well, Jimmy, again, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure. It's really been a pleasure to catch up with you. And you know, I hope that your story inspires others, you know, not to give up when something like that happens, you know. You know, it's always been great to catch up with you, to be immature on Facebook together. And you know, hopefully we'll be getting together soon, you know. I know things are opening up again, and you know, Johnny and I will be out there. So folks, you've been listening to Jimmy Darr here on Fowl Players Radio, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, Jim.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Goodbye, everyone.